Hello again, everybody. It's Dr. Hurst, Sam or Holly as you prefer. Today I'm going to continue talking about depictions of Satan for our Romancing the Gothic course. In the last video, I talked about the Miltonic Satan and gave some ideas about the way in which in the Romantic period that Satan particularly, and Satan more generally, was reimagined and picked up as a symbol of rebellion, of resistance, and adopted to some extent into this idea of the Byronic hero. There's going to be some overlap between the Byronic hero or Byronic anti-hero and Satan. So today I'm going to do two readings, actually. The first of them is going to be from Byron's play Cain. And you're going to see here a depiction of Satan, which was highly critiqued in the period from sort of the orthodox theological perspective. But we're beginning to see already very clearly that idea of Satan as a theological rebel, and through whose mouth Byron is producing critiques of orthodox theology, and particularly sort of Calvinist doctrines, but more widely some of the basic precepts of Christianity. The second reading I'm going to do is from a Russian writer called Cain and Lermontov. And I'm going to be doing those readings in English because I'm presuming that the majority of people that are going to watch this video, their first language is English. So, and also, my Russian might be all right, but my pronunciation is probably terrible. So I didn't want to go viral for entirely the wrong reasons. Anyway, before I give you the readings themselves, I'm going to give you a little bit of information about what the context is, what's going on in these plays or long narrative poems. In the case of Cain by Byron, it's quite simply the story of Cain and the murder of his brother Abel. But in Byron's rendering of this story, we find Cain in conversation with the devil, and the devil is fomenting and forwarding Cain's doubts. So a lot of the critique that occurred at the time was precisely about the way in which the devil, pictured here as a sublime figure, was uttering theological blasphemies. So for example, from the Ecclesiastical Review, and here I have a collected works of Byron, which has a lot of the contemporary criticism in margin notes at the bottom, which is super useful, recommend. Says, the impiety chargeable upon this mystery consists mainly in this, that the purposeless and gratuitous blasphemies put into the mouth of Lucifer and Cain are left unrefuted, so that they appear introduced for their own sake, and the design of the writer seems to terminate in them. There is no attempt made to prevent their leaving the strongest possible impression on the reader's mind. So there's this idea here that Byron is, in a sense, using a get-out-of-jail-free card, like we saw in talking about the monk and Zafloya in the class last week, where you're introducing all these forms of transgression, but by using a closed ending, by using a punishment, for example, in the case of the monk or Zafloya, or here, echoing the traditional biblical story of the murder committed by Cain and the consequences upon it, that you're giving this closed ending and sort of, as I say, using a get-out-of-jail-free card to cover for all of those transgressive, either sexual depictions, for example, in the monk and Zafloya, or here these transgressive theological depictions. But you're still putting them into the mouth of a sublime Satan. You're still allowing them to exist. You're still putting them out there into the world. Anyway, I'm going to read to you briefly from Cain. It's another one of my favourites. I love it. It's so good. The poetry is so good. And I'm going to start from Cain's objections. So while his family are worshipping God, Cain is off to the side complaining about his lot. And then we're going to see him meeting Lucifer. So those are that's the part that I'm going to read for you. It's not that long, hopefully. We'll see. Cain. And this is life? Toil? And wherefore should I toil? Because my father could not keep his place in Eden? What had I done in this? I was unborn. I sought not to be born, nor love the state to which that birth has brought me. Why did he yield to the serpent and the woman? Or yielding, why suffer? What was there in this? The tree was planted, and why not for him? If not, why place him near it, where it grew, the fairest in the centre? They have but one answer to all questions. 'Tis his will, and he is good. How know I that? Because he is all-powerful, must all good too follow? I judge but by the fruits, and they are bitter, which I must feed on for a fault not mine. Whom have we here? A shape like the angels, yet of a sterner and sadder aspect of spiritual essence. Why do I quake? Why should I fear him more than the other spirits, whom I see daily wave their fiery swords before the gates round which I linger oft, in twilight's hour, to catch a glimpse of those gardens which are my just inheritance, ere the night closes o'er the inhibited walls and the immortal trees which overtop the cherubim-defended battlements? If I shrink not from these, the fire-armed angels, why should I quail from him who now approaches? He seems mightier far than them, nor less beauteous. Yet not at all as beautiful as he hath been and might be. Sorrow seems half of his immortality. And is it so? And can aught grieve save humanity? He cometh. Enter Lucifer. Mortal. Spirit, who art thou? Master of spirits. And being so, canst thou leave them and walk with dust? I know the thoughts of dust, and feel for it, and with you. How? You know my thoughts? They are the thoughts of all worthy of thought. 'Tis your immortal part which speaks within you. What immortal part? This has not been revealed. The tree of life was withheld from us by my father's folly, while that of knowledge by my mother's haste was plucked too soon, and all the fruit is death. They have deceived thee. Thou shalt live. I live, but live to die. And living, see no thing to make death hateful, save an innate clinging, a loathsome and yet all invincible instinct of life, which I abhor, as I despise myself, yet cannot overcome. And so I live. Would I had never lived. Thou livest, and must live forever. Think not the earth which is thine outward covering as existence. It will cease, and thou wilt be no less than thou art now. No less? And why no more? It may be that thou shalt be as we. And ye? Are everlasting. Are ye happy? We are mighty. Are ye happy? No. Art thou? How should I be so? Look on me. Poor clay. And thou art pretendest to be wretched. Thou. I am. And thou with all thy might, what art thou? One who aspired to be what made thee, and would not have made thee what thou art. Ah, thou look'st almost a god, and I am none, and having failed to be one, would be naught save what I am. He conquered, let him reign. Who? Thy sire's maker, and the earth's, and heavens, and all that is in them. So I have heard of seraphs sing, and so my father saith. They say what they must sing and say, on pain of being that which I am, and thou art, of spirits and of men. Oh, and what is that? Souls who dare use their immortality. Souls who dare look the omnipotent tyrant in his everlasting face and tell him that his evil is not good. If he is made as he saith, which I know not, nor believe, but if he made us, he cannot unmake. We are immortal. Nay, he'd have us so, that he may torture. Let him. He is great, but in his greatness is no happier than we in our conflict. Goodness would not make evil, and what else hath he made? But let him sit on his vast and solitary throne, creating worlds to make eternity less burthensome to his immense existence and unparticipated solitude. Let him crowd orb on orb. He is alone. indefinite, indissoluble tyrant. Could he but crush himself, 'twere the best boon he ever granted. But let him reign on, and multiply himself in misery. Spirits and men, at least we sympathize, and suffering and concert make our pangs innumerable more endurable. But the unbounded sympathy of all, with all. By the unbounded sympathy of all, with all. But he, so wretched in his height, so restless in his wretchedness, must still create and recreate. Thou speakest to me of things which long have swum in visions through my thought. I never could reconcile what I saw with what I heard. My father and my mother talked to me of serpents and of fruits and trees. I see the gates of what they call their paradise, guarded by fiery sworded cherubim, which shut them out, and me. I feel the weight of daily toil and constant thought. I look around a world where I seem nothing, with thoughts which arise within me as if they could master all things. But I thought alone this misery was mine. My father is tamed down. My mother has forgot the mind which made her thirst for knowledge at the risk of an eternal curse. My brother is a watching shepherd boy who offers up the firstlings of the flock to him who bids. The earth yield nothing to us without sweat. My sister Zillah sings an earlier hymn than the birds' matins, and my Ada, my own and beloved. She too understands not the mind which overwhelms me. Never till now met I aught to sympathize with me. 'Tis well. I rather would consort with spirits. And hadst thou not been fit by thine own soul for such companionship, I would not now have stood before thee as I am. A serpent had been enough to char thee as before. Oh, didst thou tempt my mother? I tempt none, save with the truth. Was not the tree of knowledge, and was not the tree of life still fruitful? Did I bid her pluck them not? Did I plant things prohibited within the reach of beings innocent and curious by their own innocence? I would have made ye gods, and even he who thrust ye forth, so thrust ye because ye should not eat the fruit of life and become gods as we are. Weren't those his words? They were, as I have heard them from those who heard them in thunder. Then who is the demon? He who would not let ye live, or he who would have made ye live forever in the joy and power of knowledge? So as you can see here, there are a number of heterodox or even atheistical theological threads to pick up on. It's very rich theologically in terms of the critique it's offering, but the main points are, of course, this conception of God as a tyrant. There's also this sort of subtextual or fairly textual critique of the ideas, for example, of predestination and the idea of God's plan and creation. There is this sense that God is creating lesser beings just to torment them ultimately. Because if he created them for death, what sort of monster is he? So as I say, by the end of the text, you have the fairly traditional ending. Cain has murdered his brother, and there is this element of repentance, but there is no going back on many of the sort of theological challenges which are raised within the text. So this is one example of a romantic use or deployment of satanic figures. And you can see here, I'll just note it, that use very clearly of sublime imagery, where the devil is depicted as all but a god. In the second text, we have a different romantic rendering of this sort of satanic figure, where very clearly that we have a satanic figure who has become a Byronic hero, also in terms of the way that he relates to love and desires repentance, desires salvation of a sort. So in Lermontov's Demon, we're introduced to the demon himself as a sad wanderer who is sick of the temptations that he is doling out. He's sick of the people who succumb to them. And he sees from a distance Tamara, who is this beautiful, virtuous maid, and falls in love with her to some extent. You can debate as much as you like about what's actually going on there, but falls in love with her and goes, finds her after killing her prospective bridegroom, and offers himself to her, offers his love to her. So what I'm going to read for you is the passage where he's making these promises to her that he has given up his rebellion against God. Now, something that I just want to mention quickly before I read it is that there's a very clear link between this Russian writer Lermontov and the Byronic tradition. One of his most famous poems, it's a very short poem, you can see it here, is «Я не Byron». Нет, я не Byron, я другой. Еще неведомый избранник. So no, I'm not Byron. I'm another, yet unknown chosen one. So he's comparing himself to Byron, even though he's creating that distance. And he says, I'm Byron, but with a Russian soul. So you very clearly have this Byronic romantic engagement with Satan going on here. So as I say, I'm going to read that promise scene and then tell you about what happens next a little bit. The translation is from the Penguin Book of Russian Verse here. And there's no specific note on the translator of this poem, but the editor and introduction was written by Dmitry Obolensky. It's one of my favourite translations of it, to be honest. So the demon to Tamara starts his speech thus. I swear by the first day of creation. I swear by its last day. I swear by the infamy of crime and by the triumph of eternal truth. I swear by the bitter torments of the fall, by the short-lived dream of victory. I swear by my meeting with you and by our impending separation. I swear by the assembly of the spirits, brethren whom fate has subjected to me, by the swords of the passionless angels, my ever-watching enemies. I swear by heaven and by hell, by all that is sacred on earth and by you. I swear by your last glance, by your first tear, by the breath of your gentle lips, by the silken wave of your curly hair. I swear by bliss and by suffering. I swear by my love. I have renounced my old revenge. I have renounced my proud thoughts. Henceforth the poison of insidious temptation will trouble no more the minds of men. I want to make my peace with heaven. I want to love and to pray. I want to believe in good. With tears of repentance, I will efface the marks of celestial fire from my brow. Now worthy of you. And let the world in peaceful ignorance end its life without me. Oh, believe me. I alone so far have understood and appreciated you. Having chosen you from my hallowed shrine, I have laid down my power at your feet. I await your love as a gift, and in exchange for a single moment, I will give you eternity. In love as in enmity, believe me, Tamara. I am faithful and great. I, the free son of ether, will take you to spheres that lie beyond the stars, and you shall be the queen of the world, my first companion. You will look without regret or concern at the earth where there is no true happiness, no lasting beauty. Oh, leave your former desires and the pitiful world to its fate. In exchange, I will reveal to you the abyss of proud knowledge. I will bring the host of my attendant spirits to your feet. I will give you, beautiful one, airy and magic handmaidens. I will pluck for you the golden crown of the eastern star and will sprinkle it with the dew which I will take from the flowers at midnight. I will wind a ray of rosy sunset like a ribbon round your waist. I will imbue the air around you with a breath of pure fragrance. I will ceaselessly charm your ear with marvellous music. I will build splendid palaces of turquoise and amber. I will plunge to the bottom of the sea. I will fly above the clouds. I will give you everything the earth has to offer. Love me. So beautiful. Love it. Of course, the end of this story is significantly more tragic. Tamara succumbs to his blandishments, and in that first kiss, it's a kiss which kills her. There's then this fight, a fight of words with an angel who has come to lift her up to salvation, where we have this line that just gives me chills every time I read it. Гордо и в дерзости безумной, and говорит, она моя. So proudly and in sort of heedless, unconquerable madness, he cries out, he says, she is mine. But the angel wrests Tamara away from him and takes her to heaven because love was her sin, love was her failing, which qualifies her still for heaven. And our demon goes back to being this sort of cursed Byronic wanderer I think one of the things you see here is this desire for salvation. But as I talked about in the class on Saturday, the Byronic hero can't be saved. And you see these elements in that speech he gives to her where he's saying that he's putting aside his enmity for God, but he's still offering that access to knowledge, for example, that experience which inherently defies God's commands. So he carries within him this inability to be saved within this sort of Christian Orthodox framework. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm going to put some timestamps in, I think, because I want people to be able to appreciate Demon because it's so gorgeous. And thank you very much for listening today, and I will see you again, hopefully soon. My Ko-fi link is below if you want to be kind. But all of everything I'm producing is free, so also feel free not to. Anyway, goodbye.